Martonus felt as if he was floating. His mind drifted through consciousness as he allowed Reaper to empower himself within the veil. He heard the shouting and arguing of the others in the safe room, but he tried to ignore them. Takran would really argue with anyone about anything, it seemed.
"She has fallen,"
Reaper shouted.
"She underestimated him. What do we do now?"
"We wait." A loud thud battered against the door, which caused the rest of the inhabitants to quiet, which Martonus welcomed. Another thud pounded against the door, and the guards and one remaining paladin took up defensive positions around Takran. Martonus felt a pang of guilt for what was about to happen next, but it was the simplest way to handle the situation. He had never let his conscience get in the way of doing what was necessary before, and he certainly was not about to start now. The door exploded, sending shrapnel and blood flying into the room. Martonus looked towards the hired guards, watching as blood began to pour out of their faces and rush towards the now open door. So the zealot was a fourth aspect hemomancer. Interesting. The mercenaries all collapsed lifelessly to the floor. The paladin set his foot and let out a war cry as he tried charging towards the door. He only made it a few steps before he collapsed, choking on his own blood. His face began to swell and bulge as the zealot twisted and poisoned him. He shot a look of betrayal towards Martonus as he sat in the corner. He sincerely felt bad for the paladin. He was just doing his duty. Now, only Takran remained. The zealot finally entered the room and walked directly up to the governor. He no longer wore armor, but thick columns of blood swirled around him.
"Do you know who I am?"
Takran asked in fear.
"Do you know who I am?"
The zealot responded.
"I am death."
Martonus watched in amazement and mild amusement as Takran exploded, spikes of blood ripping him apart from the inside, fully obliterating him until all that remained was a pink mist. Martonus began clapping slowly as he stood. The zealot turned in surprise.
"That was quite a show, I must say."
The zealot reached out his hand towards him, most likely attempting to do something terrible to his blood. He slowly lowered his hand in uncertainty.
"I cannot feel your blood."
"Well, it's cursed, so."
"Ah, you're sanguine. No, Faden."
"Close enough. Did you kill the girl?"
"Not yet. She burned out her soul, yet she survived. An impressive feat. Her blood is useless to me now, though. Plus, I wanted her to suffer. Losing one's soul can be very traumatic for someone as entitled as her."
"Indeed. So, why are you doing all of this? I get why you killed the governor, but is there any way I can convince you to leave the rest alive?"
"Do you really think you're in a position to bargain?"
"I do, actually. How many innocents have to die before your thirst for revenge is quenched?"
"Innocents? You all think you're so morally right, and just because someone has never drawn blood that they are innocent. Who defines innocence? How many innocents have you killed?"
"More than you. More than I can remember. Even if I wanted to."
"Then you are no better than me."
"Probably not. And weirdly enough, I think we're actually working for the same people. Let's all just go home. You got your revenge, I got some olives and cheese. We can all leave happy. Kind of."
"You mistake me for some mere assassin."
"Fine. You pleased your god or whatever. Let's go."
"Crumb is not my god."
"Sorry, I guess that's a sore subject for you. So there's no way to talk this out?"
"I think not. You seem like an honorable person. It brings me no pleasure to kill you."
"Me? Honorable? Hardly. And it brings me no pleasure being killed by you either, but here we are, I suppose. Are you ready?"
"I am."
"Sorry, I wasn't actually talking to you."
"Ready."
Reaper materialized fully in front of Martonis, standing several heads above both of them, eyes blazing with otherworldly energy. Martonis smiled as he watched a pang of fear strike across the zealot's face. Armor once again formed over the zealot, and he charged towards them. Then Reaper's body expanded, stretching out across the room and casting them all in complete and utter darkness.
Welcome to the Vale.
Dalen finally looked up from Henley's face, trying to take in the aftermath around him. Part of him was hoping that he would be killed in the carnage. It would have been simpler than having to deal with whatever was left of his life now. The ballroom was now empty of living people. Those few that had survived the initial bloodbath must have fled into the back halls. All except one. In the middle of the room knelt a tall, dark woman, wearing ornate warden's robes. She looked almost as lost and broken as he felt. A door opened behind him. He slowly turned his head to see Martonis come walking into the ballroom, hardly a scratch or drop of blood on him. He stopped right in front of Dalen.
You know?
He asked solemnly.
Know what? That my entire life is a lie. That the one person I cared about had just been using and manipulating me? Do I know? No, I don't know anything anymore. I'm sorry, Dalen. Is that even my name? I can't remember. He's given me so many names. So many lives. I don't even know who I am, Martonis. Who am I?
Martonis picked up a chair. Its back had been broken off and righted it so that he could sit down in front of Dalen.
I know right now that this feels like a curse. But you've been given a gift, kid. You get to choose who you want to be, fully and completely. If you don't like your name, change it. If you don't like your life, change it. No one gets to tell you who to be anymore. Live your life the way you want to. You've been given a perspective on the world that few in history have ever shared. Don't waste it.
They sat in silence for a few uncomfortable moments. Martonis glanced over at the warden.
Be whoever you want to be, kid.
I wish he had just killed me.
I know the feeling. But for some reason, the gods or the universe itself gave you another chance at life. Make it count.
With that, he stood and walked towards the center of the ballroom.
You are getting soft in your old age,
Reaper screamed.
Reaper, we both know what it's like to forget who we are, to lose ourselves, our identity. The difference is, you and I have each other. He has no one now.
Martonis walked towards Elenshaya. She knelt in a pool of blood, looking completely dejected and defeated. He walked up and sat down in the blood beside her.
Is he?
She stuttered.
I handled it. Takran's dead. So is your other paladin. I'm sorry.
I'm sure you did all you could,
she said, staring blankly into the blood below.
Not really, but I did what was necessary.
She let out an empty chuckle.
The ministry always does.
What will you do now?
My soul is burnt out. I'll be thrown out of the order or demoted to a scribe again. My life is over, detective.
Your life is what you make it. Define yourself by power, and once that power's gone, you are left with nothing.
I am nothing now.
I've never seen someone burn out their soul like that and survive. You are anything but nothing.
Martonis stood. Elkin always acted so prideful and pompous. He had never seen one in such a state of denial and depression like this. Part of him was glad to see an Elkin humbled this way, and a warden no less. But he knew how miserable a life without purpose was, and he didn't wish that on anyone.
I hear the position for spheric governor just opened up. Maybe you should try for that.
The Empire wouldn't be caught dead with an Elkin as governor. Martonis chuckled and walked away towards the grand foyer on one side of the ballroom that led to the outside world beyond. The bloodbath was over, but his work was just beginning. He had to get to the bottom of all of this. Why was he sent here? What was the ministry planning? Hopefully, the zealot would have some answers after Reaper was done with him. He opened the ornate double doors that were no longer blocked by the warden's barriers and stepped out into the fog of night. Epilogue. It had been 5 years since Tatarin's mother had died, and he had awoken to the second and third aspects of hemomancy. His village was now nothing but rubble, and his friends and family nothing but bones. He had gone on a pilgrimage shortly after, retracing the steps of when Crom still walked the mortal world. He met many other zealots, and even a few second and third aspect hemomancers. He had been tasked by the avatar of Crom to start a new village. He gathered refugees from across Apis and built a new society. The other zealots hailed him as their leader, and they worshipped Crom for giving them such a strong protector. He was strong. The strongest hemomancer since Crom, some said. He basked in his power and their adoration. But then it all came crashing down. This time not at the hands of Broken or his paladins, but at the hands of his own people. He had been meditating, as he always did during their evening ceremonies, drawing power from himself and the sacrifices that had been made to him. He was levitating above the offerings, drawing on their power. But this time, something was different. He felt stronger. He felt something more than just what they offered. He reached out a little further and pulled on that phantom power. He opened his eyes when he heard the screams. He had accidentally drained the life of one of the high priests that served their village. He had awoken to the fourth aspect. He drew the blood of a living creature without it needing to be spilled first. The final stage of hemomantic power, and a death sentence for him. The looks of worship, adoration, and respect that his people once showed him faded to looks of fear and uncertainty. He went from being an indomitable leader to a sacrificial lamb. There were only two options for fourth aspect blood mages: offer themselves willingly to Crom, or run until he catches you. After everything he had been through, after all he had done and accomplished, was this truly to be his fate? No. The night before the avatar of Crom arrived to sacrifice him, he did something he didn't know he had the strength to do. He ran. He ran from all he had ever known, all he had ever cared about. He ran from faith and responsibility. He never expected to get this far. He always thought that Crom would tear a rift through the other world someday to claim him, but that day never came. Yet, he still ran. Now, he was alone, trying to find his way in a world that wanted him dead. He found himself in a small city, disguising himself as a healer to make some quick coin. That was when the ministry caught wind of him. There was a chase, and... Wait, why was he remembering all of this all of a sudden? Something was not right. The ground of the alley in front of him began to open up in a black void. It spread and engulfed the nearby buildings, leveling them completely. Was Crom finally coming to claim his prize? No, this was something else. Maybe something even worse. Tatarin remembered now, as a massive black form emerged from the void and towered over the city, stretching across the sky and blotting out the sun. Its infinite and burning red eyes seared into his soul as he collapsed to the ground. The city, the sky, and the land itself was now gone. All was black. All he could see was the twisting smoke and shadows, and those terrible red eyes.
How much longer will you resist me? You know this is inevitable.
God screamed from every direction. All Tatarin could do was scream in agony at the incredible power before him. Martonis walked into the small stone room that he had furnished into a makeshift holding cell. A single enchanted crystal lantern hung from the ceiling, which illuminated only half of the room in a dull orange glow. Tatarin was sitting in the middle of the room, tied to a chair, with his eyes rolled back into his skull. An oppressive shadow that expanded from him began to shrink as Martonis neared.
That's enough, Reaper.
The shadows fully retreated from Tatarin into the dark corner behind Martonis, where two piercing red eyes floated in the darkness. Tatarin's eyes focused slowly, and he gasped for breath as he came out of his trance. Martonis crouched down in front of him.
So, feel like talking yet?
Tatarin spat in his face.
You have kept me locked in here, being tortured by that thing for 3 months. I haven't broken yet. I'm not about to.
3 months, you say? Reaper, how long ago did you first trap him in the Vale?
3 days.
3 days. And yet you only feel like you've been here for 3 months? I guess he's taking it easy on you.
I'm merely warming up. I don't want to break him too quickly.
Tatarin's head fell, his eyes bulging wide from shock and dehydration.
What do you want to know?
Martonis smiled.
Why did the Ministry send you? They've plenty of assassins. If they simply wanted Takaran dead, he would have been dead a long time ago. Why did they want the whole scene? And why was I there to begin with?
They never told me why. They merely offered me an opportunity for revenge. They told me the location, but I had to figure out my own way in. They didn't want it to be obvious that they were involved.
But what does all of that accomplish? And why would they send me and keep me in the dark?
You haven't figured that out yet.
So they did tell you something?
No. All they told me was that everyone at that party had to die. Everyone. Everyone included you. They want you dead, Martonis.
But I'm a keeper. They know hemomancy doesn't work on me.
I don't need to use your blood to kill you. If your pet hadn't had time to open that portal to the Vale, things would have played out much differently.
Well, we really should be more thorough, just in case. I need to make sure you're telling the truth, after all. Reaper, a few more hours should do it. Break him.
No, wait, please.
With pleasure.
The shadows grew rapidly and filled the entire room. The dim glow of the crystal lantern was all but snuffed out as Reaper forced his way into Tatarin's mind. Tatarin screamed out in pain, and then his head fell back. Eyes once again rolled into his head. Ellen Shia sat uncomfortably atop a chair that was far too small for her, in the corner of a dark room within Martonis' safe house. After the bloodbath 3 nights ago, she let everyone believe that she had died. Things would be simpler that way. She would be paraded as a hero, not as the soulless disgrace she was now. Martonis had reported back to the Ministry, but left out the fact that she and the zealot Tatarin had survived. Of the 150 people at the ball, only 23 others had survived, most of which were staff members, including that Beshan Grimace, who had avoided the chaos by staying in the kitchen and the back halls. Martonis had offered for Ellen Shia to lay low in his safe house while they both figured out what to do next. She did appreciate his kindness, even if he was an immoral Ministry pawn. He exited the holding cell where he kept that monster and sat down on a wooden stool across the table from her. Get anything else?
Just the same old. Every time Reaper pulls him out, he forgets how long he's been in there and gives the same answers. I think he's being honest. The story doesn't change, but I need more information.
Ellen Shia usually did not support the Ministry's monstrous and liberal applications of torture, but she felt no remorse for that creature. Do you think he'll break?
He already has, several times, but he won't be able to give us information that he doesn't know. Maybe he's right. Maybe I was supposed to die. Keepers don't really get to retire. They either die in duty or what? I was going to say, or the madness takes them, but now that I think about it, the madness has never fully taken a keeper. Because the Ministry kills them off first, claiming it was in the line of duty.
Typical.
Yeah. I don't blame them, though. I almost lost myself in those back halls. If I had fully lost myself and Reaper wasn't able to heal me, he would have gone mad too. Then we would have had an unbound Phaeton rampaging through the streets. I'm a liability. But at least for now, I've proved my resolve. I doubt they'll try again anytime soon. Unless it gets bad again.
You're all delusional.
Maybe. But we get the job done. Most of the time.
They sat in silence for what felt like an eternity. Martonus finally broke the silence.
So, what's your plan? I mean, you're welcome to stay here as long as you want, but I figured you wouldn't want to stay in this musty safe house the rest of your years. You probably got at least a few decades left, right?
A few. I suppose I'll just go home.
Purica?
Yes.
Well, good luck getting off Sphere. Things are locked down pretty tight right now after the governor was killed. I have some smuggler contacts if you need.
Your questionable contacts will not be necessary. The Elkin have a henge gate in Greatwood.
I thought you said your people didn't get along well with the normal Elkin.
We don't, but they will not deny me passage.
Well, I wish you the best, sincerely, and I hope you find purpose again, whatever that may be.
Thank you, Martonus.
With that, she stood. Her head stooped slightly to avoid bumping the ceiling. She raised the hood of the nondescript cloak that she now wore over her tattered warden garb and headed out into the night. Dalen sat across the table from the two clerks that had been hounding him since he returned here after the bloodbath. He came here because it was the only place he really knew. Mortimer Henley's estate. Henley wasn't a real surname, nor was it an actual noble house, but that didn't stop Henley from convincing everyone else otherwise. Everyone who worked for him was devastated at the news. Dalen didn't care. He just wanted to disappear. He had no intention of staying here. He just wanted to gather the few items that he owned and leave. It turned out he owned more than he thought. A lot more.
You see, Master Dalen, Lord Henley had no direct heirs or living family members. We know that your relation with him was unique, but you are the only person mentioned in his will. His will is not complete, of course, as it seems Lord Henley was not planning on dying anytime soon. However, as the manager of his estate, I have elected to transfer all of his assets to your name. Master Dalen, are you listening?
He was not. Not really. He didn't want Henley's wealth. He didn't want anything else to do with him. But here he was.
You are now the 10th most wealthy person on Apis.
The other clerk mumbled something under her breath.
11th, my apologies. Tokron's wealth just passed to his 2 sons, who were already quite wealthy.
Leave me.
My lord.
Don't call me that. I'm no one's lord. Now leave. Please.
Of course, my... Sir.
The 2 clerks scurried out, leaving Dalen alone at the table in the corner of his small room. Now not only did he have to find purpose and meaning and figure out what to do with his life, he also had to find a way to get rid of all of Mortimer Henley's money. And boy, there was a lot of it. Orphan, beggar, philosopher, politician. Dalen didn't know who he was anymore. He didn't know if he wanted to live anymore. By Broken, he didn't even know all the things that he didn't know anymore. But for as strange and mysterious as he was, Martonus was right. Dalen was given a unique gift, and with it came an impossible choice. The much easier choice being to let the past, or lack thereof, consume and destroy him. Or to choose a new path, and make a new name for himself in the world. He didn't know which he would choose yet, but he would be lying not to admit that the possibilities excited him. His life may have all been an illusion, but now it was his, and his alone. Who would he become? The end of Bloodbath. Thank you for choosing to listen. This has been an Akron VA production in association with Woad Digital. Bloodbath was written, directed, voiced, and edited by James Victor. Bloodbath was so much fun to create. It opened up my eyes to the world of verbal storytelling. It's set in the world, or rather worlds, of Apotheosis, which is a universe that I've been building for years now. It spans multiple planets, several extraplanar worlds, and eons of time. Bloodbath is just a small taste of what is to come. I wrote Bloodbath for the sole purpose of being a compact and short story that doesn't contribute too much to the overall narrative of the universe, as a way to just start creating something and not getting too caught up on how it affects the rest of the world. But as I wrote, it took on a whole life of its own, and I really fell in love with the characters, and I hope you did as well. There will be plenty more stories to tell within Apotheosis, and I can't wait to share them with you. I'm sure characters such as Dalen and Martonis will appear in others too, even though they weren't my first creations within this world. They were the first that I have shared, and they will always hold a special place in my heart because of that. If you enjoyed the story, I would really appreciate it if you leave a like and a comment, and if you want to stay up to date with other stories that I will be releasing, feel free to subscribe. Thank you again so much for listening and following along with this journey. It really means the world to me, and if you decide to listen to my stories in the future, then I will see you in the next one.